And it's my great pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, who is the distinguished professor from Yale University, Dr. Gary Haller, Professor Haller. He has received numerous awards, including the Robert Burwell, Harry Fair, and IPIF lectureships, and is very well known as a trailblazer in the application of synchrotron methods to the investigation of catalyst structure and in the application of carbon nanotubes as catalyst supports. The presentation will be on interface characterization of sulfated zirconia supported on multiwalled carbon nanotubes, and his co-authors are Changchun Liu, Sungchun Lee, Dong Su, and Lisa Pfefferle. And I apologize for the pronunciation, but I didn't get it right. Please help me welcome Professor Haller.
Thank you. I first want to also offer my thanks or my congratulations, I do mean, then the thanks, to Bert for his award as Energy Fuels Distinguished Researcher in chemistry. The thanks is for what he's doing right now, and Bruce has also mentioned that this morning, that he's been reporting our history, our being the catalysis community. And but the other thing I want to say is that he's served behind the scenes, particularly in our catalysis society, for literally decades. I was for a long time foreign secretary, vice president, and president, and all I can say is that Bert was there when I came, and Bert was there when I left. So for that, I'm very pleased to offer my congratulations and thanks. So the topic that I have this afternoon is in fact one that he's contributed to. I guess he has all the ones that we've talked about. Early on, after sulfated zirconia was discovered and became one of the bandwagons on which many of our colleagues jumped, he had started to work on it. I looked and found that about a decade ago he stopped publishing on sulfated zirconia, but he was there for a decade and more working on it. So what's changed that we might look at it again? Well, we're searching for solid attitude catalysts that will work in aqueous media. So this is a possible solution to that. It won't work probably unless you can put it in a hydrophobic environment, and carbon tube support suggests that that's not possible. From the point of view of looking at the chemistry using X-ray absorption spectroscopy, what it advises you is you can isolate small particles of the order of 1 to 3 nanometers, and therefore you can bring to bear the spectroscopy that can probe from individual atoms and look at it from the sulfur, the oxygen, the zirconium sides, and maybe say something about what is going on that acid side on zirconium, and that's what I want to talk about today. So this is a cartoon on how we make these materials. The support is multiwalled carbon nanotube tubes, which are functionalized by oxidative nitric acid. We then graft a zirconium precursor, that's gelatinate, onto those functional groups, and then that is annealed at 450 for 2 hours to crystallize the zirconium oxide. We can put in a little oxygen, but we can't use the traditional calcination because we burn up the tubes. And then we impregnate with ammonium sulfate and repeat this annealing at 450, and that's the catalyst that I'm going to be talking about. But I won't say any more about the preparation itself. Now, there's several reviews in the literature of sulfated zirconia, and there are, I don't know the exact number, but perhaps as many as 30 pictures of what the sulfated zirconia sites might look like. Here's one of them. And one of the things that I want to talk about is the charge transfer that we can see as we look at the zirconium edge or the oxygen edge and the sulfur edge. And with respect to the sulfur edge, try to convince you that there really are two species, a sulfate species, and then whatever the second species is that is actually the catalyst. And so what is that, and how does it share electrons? I guess is a sub-title for me. So we have been working on the problem for some time. There are 2 recent papers that have been published, and I just want to quickly review kind of the background of just the support, which is the zirconia oxide nanoparticles on carbon tubes on which the sulfate is going to be put. So the first thing is that the zirconia nanocrystals are tetrahedral in structure. This is something that Bert looked at, the fact that sulfate will stabilize the tetrahedral structure. How do we know it's tetrahedral? High resolution TM, which there's a single particle there. Here's a blow up of that single particle, and here's a model of it. And it can, there's a fast Fourier transform that indexes as the tetrahedral structure. If we look at it by ordinary X-ray diffraction, we can also identify that the phase is tetrahedral zirconia. So that we know about it, which is not different than the bulk. The next thing I want to say is that we are going to focus our attention on weight loadings around 15% because only in that range do we have thermal stable small particles in the range of 2 nanometers. That means stable up to about 750. Higher loadings, you get larger particles initially, and they are unstable towards thermal centering. And here we're going to look at them by shear analysis with X-ray diffraction. This is too small for you to truly read, but with 15% weight loading, they start out at 2 nanometers, and after being heated to 750, they remain that. At about 40-some weight percent, they're more like 3 nanometers, and after 750, they're up to about 10 nanometers. And that's summarized in this table, which you can read at 450, 650, stable at 50 weight percent, and unstable towards centering for 40 weight percent. Or you can also see it in TM. At 450, the temperature at which they've been synthesized, the particle size is not different at the loadings, but after we center at 750, which is just barely on, there you'll see that the small loadings or low loadings stay more or less constant, but the large loadings give us larger particles. So both by TEM and X-ray diffraction, we show that they're unstable. By using small angle scattering, we can show that we have a distribution of two, a bimodal distribution. At low loadings, it's a single distribution, and then in situ, we're able to go from the synthesis temperature up to 550 and show that they're stable. But at high loadings, you have this bimodal distribution of something down here in the order of a couple of nanometers and something that's closer to 10 nanometers. And even with a modest increase of centering from 450 to 550, the smaller particles are stable, but the large ones continue to center. So for that reason, we want to have particles which we have reason to believe are covalently bonded to carbon, and they're stable thermally, and I'll show at the end that they're also hydrothermally stable, because that will be a property we will need if we're going to use it for biomass processing, so that we're going to use that for all the remaining discussion, that loading. So here is a whole bunch of electron transfer, which has been used in X-ray absorption spectroscopy. I'm not going to go through this at the moment, that's kind of a summary, but we're going to go and tune to the X-ray K edge of zirconia, the L3 edge of zirconia, the K edge of sulfur, and in all cases zanes, no XAF, and also we're going to do NEXAF on the K edge of oxygen to try to deduce this flow of electrons from the different atoms in the structure, where I'm representing it simplistically as carbon on the carbon 2 bonded to zirconium to oxygen, and then sulfur also being bonded to oxygen to zirconium. So here is the zanes of the K edge of zirconia, and there are several references here. The foil, which is not very useful. The other two is the precursor, the zirconium acetyl which has the highest white line intensity, the zirconium dioxide, which has got the lowest of the oxides, and then in between them is our actual catalyst. So how do we interpret the change in intensity of the white line? So I'm doing this in detail. Similar arguments will apply for the other X-ray absorption, but I won't do them in such detail as I do here. So the argument goes that the intensity of that white line is determined by the density of empty states at the Fermi level. And so that if you have more empty states, you get higher intensity, as you do with the precursor, the acetyl acetate, or if you get a lower intensity, that means that there's more electron density and less holes near the Fermi level. And our catalyst falls right between the precursor and involves zirconium oxide. So all I can do is do a qualitative discussion about which way electrons go. In this case, it's with respect to the bulk. With respect to the bulk, this would indicate that when we make small particles bonded to carbon, that there's been electron transfer away from the zirconia. And so that's how we come to this charge transfer conclusion, with charge transfer from zirconia to the carbon nanotubes through the oxygen. Now, as I say, I'm going to repeat that argument, but not in this detail as we go to these other techniques. So I'm going to remind you a little bit about near-edge X-ray absorption spectroscopy. This is soft X-rays, windowless X-ray absorption spectroscopy. The absorption is in the same way as it is for doing the higher energy ones, but the difference is that you're exciting, let's do it from here, you're exciting, I guess it's actually here, we're exciting something from a core to a bound molecular orbital, not a continuum, as we do in most X-ray absorption spectroscopy. And once excited, we have this electron excited into an empty orbital, and the orbitals I'm going to be using for carbon-carbon, carbon-oxygen, all of the cases I'm interested here, will be an empty pi star between oxygen and some other atom. And once excited, it can decay either by fluorescence or by Auger process, but light elements almost exclusively de-excite by an Auger process. And we're going to detect the electrons. That makes it quite surface sensitive within 2 or 3 nanometers of the surface. But I want to make 2 statements about it. Up here, about the intensity. The intensity is determined by the density of empty states very much as the white line, but now the density of empty states in this vacant pi star orbital, and that's true whether it's involved in bonding to carbon or zirconia or sulfur. But the edge intensity, the edge binding energy shift is determined by changes in electron density at the core here. In other words, the more positive charge I put on the core, the more I drag this to lower energy. And so if there's a shift in energy, meaning that this energy is greater, that would mean that this levelized at higher energy. Okay, so that just reminds you of how XF is different from other X-ray absorption spectroscopy, and how we're looking at 2 examples. These are oxygen K-edge absorptions. They're kind of dense, 2 kinds of spectra here, but I just want to draw your attention to 2 things. Over here we have the leading edge, which is at lower binding energy, is for functionalized carbon nanotubes or functionalized carbon nanotubes which have been reduced by ethanol at high temperature in the liquid phase. And they are lower binding energy than when we have zirconia, which is shifted up. Here we've got the same situation where we've got a functionalized carbon nanotube, and then again one that's been reduced with ethanol, and there's relative to zirconia, which now has, carbon nanotubes have zirconia on it, there's a shift. So in both cases, we see a change in the edge, and with respect to the intensity, we can see the case where sulfur is involved, which is it's this peak here. Underlying it is the zirconia, look at the blue case, and then this is the functionalized carbon nanotubes with no zirconia, and if we reduce them in ethanol, that intensity comes down. It's normalized, the edge jumps, so this is the average intensity on the oxygen per atom. So from that, I may draw this conclusion. The shift up the edge on graphene is real and is consistent with zirconia having transferred charge to the carbon nanotubes. The oxygen tension increase, the reaction with ethanol, or due to reduction, or maybe replacement of hydroxyls by ethoxy groups. So that's due to a charge, electron charge that has to do with the bonding to the oxy. Now, just what the nature of the zirconia peak. There are peaks. Tetraagonal. But does that affect this electronic distribution? And I will answer that by saying no, because we can make small particles which are tetragonal, both the black and the blue here, and we have a bulk zirconia there, and you can clearly see that while the sulfated bulk has a high intensity here due to the sulfur, just with the zirconia, now tetrahedral, it has the same peaks as the bulk. So that there's no electronic perturbation when we go from monoclinic to tetragonal. It is all due to the electron sharing in the orbitals to the extent that there changes intensity. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is go to the sulfur K edge, and initially we're doing something very simple here. We want to study the bonding of the sulfate to the zirconia if it were could be made more complex if in fact it was also binding the carbon edge, but it doesn't. So we put sulfate on carbon with no zirconia, we get a strong signature of the sulfur. If we heat it to 450 helium, all the sulfur decomposes and leaves the surface. But in the presence of zirconia, it does not all leave. Some of it interacts with it. If we, so there we know that all the sulfite that is retained after this thermal treatment is interacting with zirconia. We can actually turn this into a very expensive chemical analysis, you know, $50 or $100 million spectrometer, depending on how much sulfur you have. If you normalize this to, they speak to the intensity of the zirconium L3, then looking at this relative intensity, we can determine the oxygen, the sulfur content. So when we started out at initial impregnation, we had 6.5 weight percent, and so we'll just normalize that to that. And then in this case, we are looking at the intensity of the sulfur as a function of thermal treatment, 253, 54, 55, 15. It goes from something of the order of about 7 weight percent down to about 0.7 weight percent. Over here, we're doing a time study at that 450, so that it goes, you will be able to read, but 10, 30, 60, and 120 minutes. And so as synthesized, we end up with materials that are about 2 weight percent sulfur. The commercial sample that we're comparing it to is a 2.5 weight percent. So they're the same order of magnitude with respect to sulfur. I think I'm going to skip this one in the interest of time and go to this one. So now I've gone to the, we talked about the zirconium S edge, the sulfur S edge, the oxygen K edge, and now we're at the L edge. That's when we're exciting a 2s or p electron to a empty d orbital in zirconia. And what I'm showing is, you remember that in a tetrahedral field, the d orbitals are going to split. 3 of them are going to higher energy, 2 are to lower energy. And it's the same spectrum that we looked at before, normalized to the intensity of the zirconium L3, but now we're going to blow it up so that we can see that individual structure of the contribution to the orbitals of the so-called E, G, and 2G orbitals here. And what you see is we're removing the sulfur 250 to 550. As we do that, the intensity goes down. That tells us that the electron sharing is with the lower energy. That's what we expect. But it tells us a couple other things. If you look closely, you'll see that when the sulfur is on the surface, then we have a narrow peak. And when we remove the sulfur, which is the red one, the width increased. That means that the sulfur is changing the crystal field. That is, the crystal field is lower in the presence of the sulfur, and so the splitting is slower, meaning we have a narrower peak. And in the presence of sulfur, in the absence of sulfur, the splitting is greater. So from that, we can draw this conclusion: because the crystal field is greater in the presence of sulfur, we conclude that the bonding in this of sulfur to zirconia narrows that, and that's consistent with electron transfer to the zirconium, and specifically into the Eg4d orbitals. Now, this is another complicated slide. But basically what I'm going to do is to use two different sulfate precursors, ammonium sulfate and sulfuric acid, and try to convince you that you actually have two different species, the sulfate species and this new species that comes about the interaction with zirconia. And it's hard to see much going on when you just look at the raw data. That is the precursor, the ammonium sulfate that was impregnated. This is after it's impregnated. It doesn't see much, you don't see much change. And then this is after the annealing, when you crystallize the zirconia and either decompose all the sulfate or a portion of it is still interacting there. The same thing is being shown here for sulfuric acid. If you take the first or the second derivative, you will see that you now can see the beginnings of a second peak here, just after it's been impregnated. But when you anneal at 450, the second peak becomes distinct, both in the first derivative or the second derivative. These are normalized, so that's just the pattern, not the intensity you look at. What I want to draw your attention to is that if you, instead of using the ammonia sulfate, you use sulfuric acid, that second peak is much more evident right after impregnation. But after the calcining, essentially you get the same final result when you have ammonium sulfate or sulfuric acid. So one possibility is that that second peak might have some associated with protons, more available when we impregnate with sulfuric acid than when we do with ammonium sulfate. That's at least a working hypothesis. And here, so what I'm showing you here is a case where we're comparing the impregnated 50 weight percent and then after annealing, that's the black, the red, and then we're looking at the sulfated 50 weight percent and then after annealing. And as on one of the slides I skipped, what I pointed out was that this peak is assigned to sulfate, and that when you anneal it, even though the amount of sulfur is being decreased, some of it's being decomposed and removed, the intensity goes up. And the intensity, but these are normalized to the AH medium. This is the average oxygen electronic environment that we're looking at. And so this increase in intensity is due to less average electron density on the oxygen in the peak, in the pi star peak. When that happens, it could be a consequence of that proton withdrawing electron charge, but in fact, it can be any other electron withdrawal that happens at the sulfur during this annealing. But one possibility is it's the fact that that species has associated with a proton, which is withdrawing charge. So I'm going to quickly, this is about the charge transfer, it's not about the catalysis, but of course you will want to be reassured that this has some relevance, and I'm going to try to give you just two bits of relevance. One is that the small particles of zirconia not only thermally stable, they're hydrothermally stable, because here we started out with 2.6 nanometer particles. We heated it for 6 hours at room temperature, at 6 hours at 95, and 6 hours at 200 degrees Celsius. And essentially the particle size doesn't change, and if we measure the loading within experimental air, we're not dissolving or removing any zirconia, so they're quite stable. Unfortunately, I can't show you the results for the sulfated zirconia because I don't have that now. But we've just taken, this is another recent results where we just compared reactions for the conversion of butane at 4 temperatures for 4, 5, and 600 degrees. This is the commercial sulfated zirconia. These are the small particles of the sulfated zirconia. They seem to be a little more reactive. This is on a mass. The units here are micromoles per gram of catalyst per second. I had thought that there should be no difference in the sulfate as a matter of particle size, but maybe there is, not just because it's more active, but because the activation energy is quite a bit lower on these sulfated small particles than it is in the large ones. But anyway, these are recent data, and I don't think I could make that much of it at this point. I would just assure you that if you put it on a per sulfur basis, that doesn't change much because this is about 2 weight% and this is about 2.5 weight%. The difference is there's a lot less zirconia in this case, a lot more surface area but accommodating the same amount of sulfur. So it's a more efficient use of the zirconia, but not that much more active, I don't believe. Okay, so these are things I've already told you, so I'm not going to read through them. They're my conclusions. I am going to go to the next one, which is kind of pictorial. So this is all of this electron shifting that we think that we've looked at. So it's not a simple matter as we show, as I took from that review article, showing that there's charge transfer from sulfur to zirconia. In fact, it looks like both looking at the K-edge by the binding energy of sulfur and also at the oxygen K-edge shifting higher binding energy, those all say that there's electron density from oxygen sulfur, but also electron density to zirconia. So the net, if you look at this, is that this oxygen at the interface is gaining electron density both from zirconia and from carbon. This oxygen is losing electron density to sulfur and zirconia. So the real difference is just the net change between the sulfur and the oxygen. What does that mean with respect to catalysis? Well, presumably that there's the possibility that there's a proton on one of these oxygens. That at least is consistent with the structure that we saw from the sulfur K edge, and so it might have catalysis relevance for that reason. I was going to say a little bit more about the crystal fields and what that means, but I think in the interest of time, I'll skip that and say that we had financial support from the Department of Energy and the Air Force. We've had lots of beam time at Brookhaven and Argonne National Laboratory, and a lot of help from other people, particularly I mentioned Trudy Bola, who's worried about how to analyze sulfur at Argonne, and Dong Su, who did the high resolution, both the experiment and analysis for us. And thank you for your attention, and congratulations begins to you, Bert.
Thank you very much for this very interesting paper, and the floor is open for questions. Actually, yes.
In the synthesis of the catalyst, there is a thermal treatment at 450 degrees centigrade to remove the acetyl acetonate, or to convert it into the zirconium oxide.
To crystallize it.
And to crystallize the zirconium oxide. To what extent, what is the possibility that there will be direct bonds between zirconium and carbon in your system?
I believe there is. I mean, it's in the other two papers. I didn't go into detail, but we make I think, a fairly strong argument that there have to be bonds between the carbon and the zirconia. That was the intent. That's the reason we grafted them before. But you worry about when it crystallized to make a small particle, did you lose all of that? But the fact that it's thermally stable, I think, is a factor of covalent bonding. The fact that it's hydrothermally stable because you used up all the oxygen, so it's hydrophobic, and so it resists hydrolysis of that carbon oxygen zirconia. So we've got lots of evidence, and I, at least, even if not all the reviewers, are convinced that it really is a covalent bond between carbon and the nanoparticle that we start with.
Concerned with James and negatives for the oxygen KH and sulfur KH and zirconium LH. Those data are very nice and powerful techniques. But that is assumed the all oxygen site and the sulfur site, the zirconium site, and constant, uniform, because that is the average information. So the particular site is the realistic site that
Yeah, so it's true that everything I've said is based on X-ray absorption, which averages over every element, every atom of an element in the sample. The thing that makes it, I think, useful here is that by the time you get a zirconium oxide particle that's of order of 1 nanometer, most of the zirconia is on the surface. And so that looking at the average, I think, meaning that the sulfate and the zirconia and the oxygen that's at the interface are all contributing, but they're all more or less at the interface of either the sulfur to zirconia or zirconia to carbon, and so that average probably is still meaningful. I mean, the fact that you can see a change in the width of the crystal field of zirconium, these small particles, is only because they're all small enough that most of the zirconia contributing is the surface zirconia. So I don't think it's a problem that it's an average because of the small particles, is the short answer.
Yes. Do we have any more questions? If not, please help me thank Dr. Haller one more time.